I'm Eliza Wilson, 32 years old, and I've spent my entire life living in the shadow of my brother Adam. Growing up, he was always the golden child, smart, ambitious, and destined for greatness. Meanwhile, I was just there. That night at his engagement party, when he raised his glass and publicly humiliated me, something inside me finally snapped. I never planned on revealing my secret that evening, but when he looked at me with that smug smile, I knew exactly what I had to do. Before I tell you what happened next, drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, hit that like button, and subscribe to see more stories about sweet, sweet karma. Growing up in our middle-class suburban home in Boston, the dynamic between my brother Adam and me was established early. Adam was 4 years older, and from the moment he brought home his first perfect report card, my parents treated him like he hung the moon. I still remember sitting at our oak dining table when Adam was 12, proudly showing off his science fair trophy while my parents cooed over his achievement. "Adam has the Wilson brain for business," my father would say, clapping him on the why shoulder. "He's going places." When I showed my parents my artwork that same day, my mother merely smiled distractedly and said, "That's nice, Eliza," before turning back to Adam. This pattern repeated throughout our childhood. Adam's achievements were celebrated with dinners out and excessive praise, while mine were acknowledged with polite nods. Adam quickly learned that he could use this dynamic to his advantage. When I was 8 and he was 12, we were playing Monopoly with our cousins. After I managed to secure Boardwalk and Park Place, Adam knocked the board over, accidentally, and whispered so only I could hear, "You'll never beat me at anything that matters." Our parents, walking into the room at that moment, immediately asked Adam what happened. "Eliza got upset because she was losing," he lied smoothly. Despite my protests, they believed him. They always did. My brother's competitive nature extended beyond games. When I was 10 and won a school art contest, Adam couldn't stand that the attention wasn't on him. At the small ceremony, while my artwork was being displayed, he loudly told everyone about his recent math test score. My parents beamed at him, completely missing my moment on stage when I received my certificate. That night, Adam came into my room and said, "Nobody cares about drawing, Lizzie. It's not a real talent like being good at math." I cried myself to sleep, but the next day I defiantly drew an even better picture. This pattern created deep-seated insecurities in me, but also sparked a quiet determination. Our family dynamic was further reinforced through birthdays and holidays. On my 13th birthday, my parents gave me a simple art set, while just a month prior for Adam's 17th birthday, they had given him a laptop for his future business studies. When I expressed interest in creative writing classes in junior high, my father frowned and suggested I focus on something practical instead. Meanwhile, when Adam joined the investment club, my parents took him shopping for his first suit. My mother, though loving in her way, unconsciously perpetuated this inequality. "Your brother knows what he wants," she would tell me when I struggled with what extracurriculars to choose. "You should try to be more focused, like him." What she didn't understand was that my exploration of different interests wasn't indecision. It was my natural curiosity and creativity-seeking expression. One particularly painful memory was my 16th birthday dinner. After I blew out the candles, Adam announced he had received early acceptance to Wharton Business School. Immediately, my celebration became about him, with my parents spending the rest of the evening discussing his bright future. I sat there, my birthday cake half-eaten, feeling invisible in my own life. Despite these challenges, I found solace in art. My bedroom became my sanctuary, walls covered with my paintings and sketches. While Adam collected trophies and certificates, I collected colors and ideas. When I won a regional young artist competition at 17, I was ecstatic. The award ceremony was on the same day as one of Adam's debate tournaments, which he didn't even win. Yet my parents chose to attend his event instead of mine. My art teacher, Ms. Calloway, was the only one who cheered for me when they called my name. "You have a gift, Eliza," she told me afterward. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Those words became a lifeline for me during the years when my family made me feel that my talents were somehow lesser. By the time I finished high school, Adam had already established himself as the family success story, while I was still trying to convince my parents that pursuing art was a legitimate choice. What none of them realized was that their doubt was slowly forging something in me, a determination to succeed on my own terms, in my own way, no matter how long it took. The real divergence in our paths began when college decisions arrived. Adam, predictably, headed off to Wharton with a partial scholarship and abundant pride from our parents. I still remember the going-away party they threw for him. Balloons, emblazoned with future CEO and a cake shaped like a dollar sign. 2 years later, when I announced my acceptance to Rhode Island School of Design for Graphic Design, my parents exchanged worried glances across the kitchen counter. "Are you sure about this, Eliza?" my father asked, his forehead creased with concern. "The art field is so competitive and the salaries—" My mother chimed in. "We just want you to be secure, honey." The unspoken comparison to Adam hung in the air between us. Moving into my cramped dorm room was a stark contrast to when we had helped Adam settle into his spacious apartment near campus. My parents had splurged on new furniture for him, citing the importance of presenting yourself properly in business. For me, they helped carry up my second-hand desk and reminded me to be careful with money. Those college years widened the gap between us. While Adam joined elite business fraternities and networked with the children of Fortune 500 executives, I immersed myself in creative communities and discovered my passion for digital design. During one winter break, Adam arrived home wearing a Rolex. "A gift from my internship mentor," he explained casually. I was working part-time at a local coffee shop to afford my art supplies. Our family dynamics shifted further when Adam secured a prestigious position at Goldman Sachs immediately after graduation. At the family dinner celebrating his new job, he ordered the most expensive bottle of champagne without glancing at the price. "The signing bonus more than covers it," he said with a wink to our father. 6 months later, when I graduated and took an entry-level position at a small design studio in Boston, there was no celebratory dinner. Instead, my mother asked worriedly if my starting salary would cover my student loan payments. The first major family gathering where the wealth disparity became uncomfortable was Thanksgiving, just a year after we had both graduated. Adam arrived in a new BMW, wearing a tailored suit even though it was a casual family event. He presented our parents with expensive gifts, a Swiss watch for Dad and diamond earrings for Mom. I had brought a hand-designed photo album that had taken weeks to create but cost little in materials. When I gave it to them, Adam snickered and whispered, "Couldn't afford real presents." The following Christmas was even worse. As the family sat around opening gifts, Adam announced casually, "By the way, my holiday bonus this year was more than Lizzie's annual salary." He didn't even look at me when he said it, as if I wasn't worth acknowledging in his moment of triumph. My parents laughed nervously but didn't correct his rudeness. That night, I overheard my mother asking Adam if he could help me find a real job at his company. "They probably need someone to design brochures or something," she suggested. His response was cutting. "Mom, they only hire top talent. Eliza wouldn't qualify." By our mid-20s, Adam had moved into a luxury high-rise in downtown Boston with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor. Meanwhile, I shared a 2-bedroom apartment in Somerville with a roommate, carefully budgeting each month to make ends meet. When Adam hosted his 30th birthday party at an exclusive rooftop bar, he invited the entire family but specified formal attire only on the invitation. I maxed out my credit card on a dress I couldn't afford, only to have him greet me with, "You could have made an effort for once, Lizzie," despite my new outfit. As Adam climbed the corporate ladder, his materialism and status obsession grew. Every family gathering became a showcase for his latest acquisition, the vacation property in the Hamptons, the vintage wine collection, the private jet membership. Our parents absorbed his values, increasingly measuring success in dollar signs and status symbols. At one Sunday dinner, I mentioned a creative breakthrough I'd had at work, designing a campaign that had received positive feedback from the client. Before I could finish, Adam interrupted with news about closing a 7-figure deal. My parents immediately shifted their attention to him, asking for every detail while my story remained unfinished. "That's how you know you're succeeding, Lizzie," Adam said afterward patronizingly, "when the numbers have 7 digits. Each interaction reinforced the message. His path was legitimate, mine was a hobby. His success was measured in wealth accumulation, while my creative achievements were merely cute distractions. Despite this, I continued building my portfolio and skills, finding community among other creatives who valued innovation over income. Brackets. I was slowly carving my own definition of success, though my family couldn't see it yet. Little did they know, these early struggles were forging the resilience I would need for what came next. The economic downturn hit the creative industry like a tsunami, and small design studios were the first to go under. I still remember my boss Marla's face when she called us all into the conference room that Friday afternoon. "I've tried everything," she said, voice cracking. "We're closing doors next week." Just like that, I was unemployed with 3 months of rent saved up and student loans entering repayment. The timing couldn't have been worse. The job market was flooded with experienced designers from shuttered agencies, all competing for the few positions still available. I applied to 67 jobs in the first month, securing only 3 interviews that all ended with, "We've decided to go with someone with more experience." My savings dwindled alarmingly fast. When I could no longer afford both rent and loan payments, I swallowed my pride and called my parents. "Of course we'll help," my mother said immediately, but my father added, "You should talk to Adam. He knows about financial matters." That call to Adam remains one of the most humiliating experiences of my life. "I told you this would happen," he said, not even trying to hide the smugness in his voice. "The problem with creative careers is that they're luxuries. When the economy tightens, art is the first thing people stop paying for." He invited me to dinner at his country club, ostensibly to discuss my situation. I arrived in my nicest outfit, which still felt woefully inadequate amid the wealthy patrons. Adam ordered without consulting me, including an expensive bottle of wine I would never have chosen. "So," he said, leaning back in his chair after the waiter left, "have you considered getting a real job yet?" I explained that I was looking for design positions but might need a temporary loan to cover expenses. "Interesting," he replied, swirling his wine. "I could help you, but I'd need assurances that you're being fiscally responsible. Maybe I could pay your landlord directly, review your spending." The strings attached to his offer were suffocating. When I declined, preferring to find another solution, he shrugged. "Suit yourself, but don't come crying to me when you're still struggling. In 5 years while I'm making partner." The next family dinner became a platform for Adam's lecture on financial responsibility after Mom mentioned my situation. "The problem with your generation," he pontificated, despite being only 4 years older, "is that you choose passion over practicality." He detailed his investment portfolio while I pushed food around my plate, feeling smaller with each word. If Lizzie had listened to Dad about studying business instead of doodling, she wouldn't be in this position. When my lease ended and I couldn't secure another apartment without proof of income, I faced the ultimate humiliation, moving back into my childhood bedroom at age 27. My parents tried to be supportive, but I could feel their disappointment. Their daughter, the failure, returning home while their son thrived. The contrast between my situation and Adam's became painfully apparent when he invited the family to see his newly purchased luxury condo. 3 bedrooms for one person, a marble-countered kitchen he never used for cooking, and a dedicated wine room. "The building has a concierge and private car service," he boasted as we toured his kingdom. Looking directly at me, he added, "The monthly HOA fee is probably more than you used to make, Lizzie." My rock-bottom moment came one rainy Tuesday afternoon. Sitting on my childhood bed, surrounded by rejection emails and past due notices, I seriously considered abandoning my creative pursuits altogether. Maybe they were all right. Maybe I should apply for administrative roles at insurance companies or banks. Something practical that would pay the bills. Adam's patronizing offers continued. "I know a guy who needs an assistant," he said during one visit. "The pay is mediocre, but beggars can't be choosers. Of course, you'd have to dress professionally for once." Each offer came with conditions. I would need to check in with him regularly about my finances. I would have to admit he had been right about my career choice. I would need to learn from my mistakes. The worst incident came when I borrowed my parents' car for a job interview. Adam happened to stop by and saw me in my interview outfit. "Finally looking for real work?" he asked. When I explained it was for a marketing design position, he scoffed. "Let me save you some time. I'll spot you 3 months' rent if you take some business classes instead. This art thing clearly isn't working out." His offer felt less like help, and more like a bribe to validate his life choices. "I appreciate it," I said stiffly, "but I'll find my own way." His expression hardened. "Suit yourself. Just don't expect me to bail you out when you're 40 and still finding your way." That night, something shifted in me. Staring at my portfolio spread across my bedroom floor, I realized I wasn't just fighting for a paycheck. I was fighting for validation of my entire identity and the belief that creative work had inherent value. Adam's definition of success was narrow, accumulation of wealth and status. But what if there was another way to succeed? One that honored both financial stability and creative fulfillment? I gathered my portfolio, organized my best work, and made a decision. I would rebuild on my own terms, creating something that would merge my design skills with the business acumen I had absorbed despite myself. What emerged from that moment of determination would eventually shock my entire family, especially Adam. The idea struck at 3 a.m, that magical hour when desperation meets clarity. For weeks, I had noticed a gap in the market while searching for freelance tools. Existing design platforms were either too complex for beginners or too limited for professionals. What if I created an application that bridged this divide, something that combined intuitive interfaces with powerful capabilities? I named the concept Canvas Connect and spent the next week sketching wireframes and user journeys. When I mentioned it to my mother over breakfast, she smiled politely. "That sounds nice, dear." When Adam overheard me discussing it on the phone, his reaction was less kind. "Software development? You don't even know how to code," he scoffed. "Stick to what you know, making things look pretty." His dismissal only fueled my determination. I reached out to Jamie Chen, a former classmate who had transitioned from design to front-end development. "This has potential," she said after reviewing my concept. "The market is fractured, and your approach solves real pain points." With Jamie on board, I contacted Miguel Rodriguez, a UX researcher I had worked with at my previous job. My small team began meeting in coffee shops and my parents' garage, bootstrapping the operation with what little savings we had left. We conducted user interviews, identifying specific needs our platform could address. Adam's mockery continued whenever he visited our parents. "Playing startup in the garage? How cute," he said, examining our whiteboard filled with user stories. "Real tech companies need millions in funding and actual engineers, not art school dropouts." I didn't bother explaining that neither Jamie nor I had dropped out. We had degrees and years of professional experience. His narrative required us to be failures. Our first investor pitch was a disaster. The venture capitalist, a friend of Adam's, spent the meeting checking his watch and asking basic questions that revealed he hadn't reviewed our proposal. "Design tools are a saturated market," he concluded dismissively, "and your team lacks technical credentials." 3 more rejections followed, each citing different concerns but conveying the same message. We weren't taken seriously. The lowest point came during a family barbecue when Adam brought several work colleagues. Overhearing me explain Canvas Connect to our cousin, he loudly interjected, "Lizzie's playing entrepreneur these days. Last month it was freelance, now it's software. Next month? Who knows? Maybe rocket science?" His colleagues laughed on cue. I excused myself to the bathroom and cried silently for 5 minutes before returning with a forced smile. The unexpected breakthrough came through Marla, my former boss. She had landed at a digital innovation incubator and invited me to pitch at their monthly showcase. "No promises," she warned. "But your concept addresses real problems I faced running a design studio." The showcase audience included Dana Washington, a former designer who had transitioned to angel investing with a focus on creative technology. Unlike previous investors, she asked insightful questions that demonstrated genuine interest. "What impressed me," Dana said afterward, "wasn't just the concept, but how thoroughly you validated the market need despite limited resources." 2 weeks later, Dana offered $150,000 in seed funding in exchange for a reasonable equity stake. I signed the papers in a state of disbelief, then drove straight to the bank. Seeing that deposit, more money than I had ever had in my account, I finally allowed myself to cry with relief. With funding secured, we rented a small office space and hired a back-end developer. I deliberately kept quiet about these developments during family gatherings, tired of Adam's undermining comments. When my parents asked how my little project was going, I simply said, "Making progress." In reality, we were working 18-hour days, fueled by a vision that grew clearer as our prototype took shape. Our beta launch exceeded expectations, with 500 design professionals signing up in the first week. The feedback was constructive and overwhelmingly positive. Finally, someone who understands what designers actually need. Our user base grew organically through word of mouth in the design community. Each new feature we implemented attracted more subscribers to our platform. 6 months after securing funding, we were approaching the break-even point, an almost unheard-of achievement for a tech startup. Still, I maintained what my team jokingly called my stealth mode with family. At Thanksgiving, when Adam bragged about his latest bonus, I nodded appreciatively while mentally calculating our monthly recurring revenue, which had just crossed a significant threshold. By the time Christmas arrived, we had secured our second round of funding, $1.2 million from a venture capital firm specializing in creative technology. I signed those papers on December 23rd, then drove to my parents' house for the holidays, carrying the secret of my growing success like a precious gift I wasn't yet ready to share. The external validation was sweet, but what mattered more was the internal certainty that I had found my purpose at the intersection of creativity and technology. While Adam accumulated wealth by moving money around, I was building something that actually helped people create. The true irony? His constant belittling had pushed me to develop the very business acumen he claimed I lacked. I had become fluent in the languages of both art and commerce, able to translate between worlds he could only inhabit one of, and soon, very soon, everyone would know it. The 2 years following our seed funding were a masterclass in strategic growth and patience. While Adam continued to flaunt his promotions and bonuses at family gatherings, I quietly reinvested every dollar of profit back into Canvas Connect. Our small team expanded to 15 people, each bringing unique skills and shared passion for revolutionizing design technology. Jamie, now our CTO, implemented an innovative approach to cloud-based rendering that significantly outperformed competitors. Miguel developed a user research program that kept us intimately connected to our customers' evolving needs. What distinguished Canvas Connect wasn't just technical innovation, but our deep understanding of creative workflows. Traditional design. Software was built by engineers for engineers, with creativity as an afterthought. Our platform was different. We built it as designers first, technologists second. This approach resonated strongly with our growing user base. My role evolved from hands-on designer to visionary and strategist. I learned to read financial statements as fluently as design briefs, to negotiate contracts with the same attention to detail I once applied to typography, During weekday mornings, I led product strategy meetings. Weekend nights, I studied business journals and investor reports. The breakthrough came when Visionary Media Group, a mid-sized agency with offices across the East Coast, implemented Canvas Connect across their entire operation. Their creative director, Sophia Kwan, had been an early beta tester. We've increased our design output by 40% while reducing revision cycles by half, she reported in a case study that attracted significant industry attention. Suddenly, companies that had ignored us were calling to schedule demos. Our monthly recurring revenue doubled, then tripled within a quarter. Throughout this growth period, I maintained my policy of professional privacy around my family. When my mother asked how work was going, I offered vague positive responses. It's coming along nicely. When Adam interrogated me about my income, during Sunday dinners I deflected with humor, enough to keep me in macaroni and cheese. This wasn't purely about waiting for the perfect moment for revelation. A quieter, more personal transformation was occurring. I was learning to validate myself without requiring my family's approval. My confidence grew from tangible achievements rather than others' recognition. The spring before Adam's engagement, we secured our first enterprise client, a Fortune 500 company implementing Canvas Connect across their global marketing departments. The contract value was more than Adam's annual salary, but I celebrated quietly with my team rather than announcing it to my family. Occasionally, I caught my father watching me curiously when I excused myself from family events to take business calls. Once, he asked, "Things seem to be picking up with your work?" I simply smiled and said, "Yes, we're keeping busy." In truth, busy meant closing a Series A funding round of $14 million, expanding to international markets, and being featured in Tech Innovator magazine. The company's valuation had reached a number that still felt surreal when I saw it in official documents. Our office had moved from a cramped shared space to occupying an entire floor in a downtown building with our logo displayed prominently in the lobby. On rare occasions when I left family gatherings early for work commitments, I was heading to meetings with potential partners or investors who had flown in specifically to meet with me. The ultimate validation came unexpectedly. Rebecca Torres, CEO of Artemis Digital, one of the largest creative technology companies in the world, requested a private dinner during her visit to Boston. Over seafood at an upscale restaurant overlooking the harbor, she laid out her vision. Canvas Connect has revolutionized collaborative design in ways we've been trying to achieve for years, she admitted. We're interested in discussing acquisition. The figure she mentioned so casually nearly made me choke on my wine. It was followed by discussions of retention packages, leadership roles, and growth strategies that would keep our team intact, while scaling our technology globally. As I signed the preliminary agreement in my office the following week, with lawyers and executives from both companies present, a notification lit up my phone, an invitation to Adam's engagement party. The timing was almost poetic. After pushing send on an email confirming our interest in Artemis's acquisition offer, I opened Adam's invitation. The embossed card specified black tie optional and included a note. Try to dress appropriately, Lizzie. Vanessa's family are important people. I smiled to myself, thinking about the irony of his continued condescension. The acquisition process would take months to complete, with due diligence and regulatory approvals still ahead. The official announcement was scheduled for the week after Adam's engagement party. For a moment, I considered accelerating the timeline to coincide with his celebration, but decided against it. This achievement was mine, the result of vision, hard work, and perseverance. It didn't need to be weaponized, even against someone who had weaponized his success against me for years. Or so I thought, until the night of the party arrived and changed everything. The news of Adam's engagement to Vanessa Caldwell dominated our family conversations for weeks. Vanessa came from old New England money. Her father owned a shipping company. Her mother sat on the boards of Boston's most prestigious cultural institutions. They have a summer house in Martha's Vineyard next to the Kennedys, my mother whispered reverently when Adam first introduced her. Their courtship had been as strategic as one of Adam's business deals. Dinners at exclusive restaurants, weekends at luxury resorts, carefully documented on social media for maximum status signaling. The engagement ring featured a diamond that Adam made sure everyone knew was internally flawless, just like Vanessa. The engagement party planning reflected the merger of two status-obsessed individuals. Adam called me on a Tuesday evening, his tone making it clear that speaking to me was a task to be checked off his list. "The party's at the Bristol Lounge," he stated without preamble. 8 to midnight, black tie optional but strongly encouraged. Vanessa's family will be there, so try to look presentable. Nothing artistic. He emphasized the last word like it was synonymous with homeless. "And Lizzie," he added before hanging up, "if anyone asks what you do, maybe just say marketing instead of whatever it is you call yourself these days. Vanessa's father doesn't respect creative types." I should have declined the invitation then, but family obligation, that powerful gravitational force, kept me in its orbit. My mother called the next day, anxiety evident in her voice. "You will come to your brother's engagement party, won't you? It would break my heart if both my children weren't there for such an important occasion." She paused before adding, "And please, honey, wear something nice, not one of your statement pieces." The subtext was clear. Don't embarrass us in front of the Caldwells. Meanwhile, Canvas Connect was entering the final stages of acquisition talks with Artemis Digital. Daily meetings with lawyers, accountants, and integration teams consumed my schedule. The valuation had been finalized, a number so substantial that I sometimes woke up at night convinced I had dreamed it. Rebecca Torres had personally requested that I stay on as Chief Innovation Officer post-acquisition with a generous compensation package and significant autonomy. The timing created a perfect storm. The final paperwork would be signed the morning of Adam's engagement party, with the public announcement scheduled for the following week. Only my core team knew about the acquisition. We had maintained strict confidentiality throughout negotiations. Part of me wanted to share the news with my family before it became public, but another part, the part scarred by years of dismissal, was hesitant. Would they finally acknowledge the legitimacy of my path, or find new ways to minimize my achievement? The week before the party, Adam called again. "Vanessa's worried about the guest list," he began without greeting. "I've assured her that despite your unconventional choices, you can behave appropriately for one evening." His voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. "Her father is considering me for a position in their family office. This could be huge for me, Lizzie. Please don't do anything weird." My parents applied their own pressure. "Adam has worked so hard for this," my father said during Sunday lunch. "His connection to the Caldwell family could secure his future. We're all so proud of how far he's come." My mother nodded enthusiastically. "Vanessa is exactly the kind of woman we always hoped Adam would find. Refined, well-connected." The implication hung unspoken, unlike the creative, independent-minded women I had introduced them to over the years. The morning of the party, I sat in our company conference room, watching our attorney and Artemis's representatives exchange signed documents. Rebecca Torres raised a champagne toast to Canvas Connect, the future of creative technology and newest member of the Artemis family. As CEO and majority shareholder, my bank account had just increased by 8 figures, with further millions in stock options and performance bonuses structured over the next 3 years. Yet hours later, I would be attending a party where I was expected to downplay my career to avoid embarrassing my brother. The irony was almost too perfect. That afternoon, I visited a high-end boutique and purchased a black designer dress that cost more than I had spent on clothing in the previous year combined. The acquisition had closed. I could afford it. More importantly, I wanted to look the part of success on my own terms, not flashy, but undeniably polished. As I was paying, my phone buzzed with a text from Adam. Reminder: Vanessa's family is old money. They find discussion of finances vulgar. Please don't bring up your startup or ask any of them for investments. See you at 8. Don't be late. I stared at the message, a plan forming in my mind. Until that moment, I had intended to keep my news private, perhaps sharing it quietly with my parents after the acquisition announcement went public. Adam's text crystallized something for me. Years of being treated as lesser, of having my path delegitimized, of being the family embarrassment. I wasn't seeking revenge exactly, but perhaps it was time for a reckoning, a rebalancing of the family narrative. Before leaving my apartment, I carefully wrapped a small box in silver paper. Inside was a copy of the acquisition press release, embargoed until the following week but already printed for the board, along with a business card identifying my new position as Chief Innovation Officer at Artemis Digital. I added a handwritten note: different paths, different destinations. Congratulations on your engagement. I wasn't sure if I would actually give it to him, but as I slipped the package into my evening clutch, I felt prepared for whatever the night might bring. The Bristol lounge had been transformed for the occasion, dripping with white orchids and crystal that captured and multiplied the light from overhead chandeliers. A string quartet played softly in one corner, providing a sophisticated soundtrack for Boston's elite as they circulated with champagne flutes and practiced smiles. I arrived precisely on time, neither fashionably late nor eagerly early, a calculated neutrality. The maitre d' checked my name against the guest list with a slight raise of his eyebrow. Wilson? Ah, you must be Adam's sister. His tone suggested this was unexpected, as if my name didn't quite belong among the others on his clipboard. My parents spotted me immediately, my father looking relieved at my appearance. You look nice, my mother whispered, adjusting my necklace. Slightly. Very appropriate. My father nodded approvingly. Adam's already introducing Vanessa's father to his managing director. Quite a coup for him. The approval in his voice was unmistakable. Adam was once again advancing the family reputation. I navigated through clusters of conversations, recognizing some of Adam's colleagues from previous family events. They greeted me with vague politeness, clearly unable to remember what I did for a living, but certain it wasn't important. Eliza, right? Adam's little sister? You're in graphic design or something? One asked, already looking over my shoulder for more valuable networking opportunities. Vanessa materialized before I could respond, resplendent in a couture gown that probably cost more than my first car. Eliza! You came! She exclaimed with practiced warmth, air kissing near both my cheeks. Adam was worried you might not make. It's something about a work emergency? Her tone made it clear that whatever constituted an emergency in my world couldn't possibly compare to the importance of this gathering. Wouldn't miss it, I replied with a genuine smile. Despite everything, I didn't blame Vanessa for Adam's behavior or attitudes. She was simply the latest extension of his value system. Adam appeared at her side, possessively placing his hand on the small of her back. Lizzie, you clean up well. His gaze inventoried my appearance with surprised approval. Almost didn't. Recognize you without paint on your clothes. He laughed as if this were a charming joke rather than a subtle put-down. Throughout the evening, Adam worked the room like the investment banker he was, calculating the value of each interaction. Whenever we occupied the same conversation cluster, he found ways to minimize my contributions. When a guest asked about my work, Adam interrupted with, Lizzie's got a little online business, a website for designers or something. Hobby stuff, really. But speaking of significant enterprises, did Vanessa tell you about her father's expansion into Asian markets? The pattern continued through dinner. Seated at a table with several of Adam's colleagues and their partners, I answered questions about Canvas Connect, only to have Adam redirect the conversation. Enough about Lizzie's projects, he would interject. Mark, tell everyone about that hedge fund deal you closed last week. By the time dessert arrived, a familiar feeling had settled in my chest. The invisibility I had known throughout childhood, expertly reinforced by my brother's social maneuvers. Then came the toasts. Vanessa's father spoke first, welcoming Adam to their family with mentions of shared values and similar drive. My father followed with an emotional speech about Adam's lifelong determination and success. Several of Adam's colleagues offered anecdotes about his business acumen and competitive spirit. Finally, Adam himself stood, commanding the room's attention with practiced ease. He thanked everyone for coming, praised Vanessa's family for their acceptance. And then, champagne flute raised high, he turned slightly toward where I sat. "You know, events like this make you reflect on life's journeys," he began, his voice carrying across the now silent room. "Some of us rise to the opportunities presented to us, seize every advantage, build something substantial." His gaze swept the room, connecting with the powerful figures present before settling back on me. "And some just exist, drifting through life, waiting for success to find them somehow." The room filled with polite chuckles, no one quite certain if this was a joke but following Adam's lead nonetheless. "To different paths," he concluded with a smirk, visible only to me, raising his glass higher. The room echoed with, "To different paths," as guests drank. My mother shot me a concerned glance from across the table, while my father studied his dessert fork with sudden interest. The gift box felt heavy in my clutch. I had planned to keep my news private, to find a more appropriate moment for revelation, but Adam's toast, the public reinforcement of a narrative he had crafted about me for decades, crystallized something in my mind. This wasn't about revenge, it was about truth, about correcting a fundamental misrepresentation that had shaped our family dynamic for too long. With a calm I didn't entirely feel, I rose from my seat and walked to where Adam stood still, basking in the aftermath of his toast. Conversations hushed as guests noticed my movement. Adam's expression flickered, between annoyance and confusion as I approached. From my clutch, I withdrew the small silver-wrapped box and extended it to him. "For the groom," I said, my voice steady and clear in the sudden quiet. "A small engagement gift." Surprise replaced his irritation. I had never been one for expensive gifts, and he undoubtedly expected some handmade token he could privately mock later. He took the package with a perfunctory, "Thanks, Lizzie," clearly preparing to set it aside unopened. "Please," I insisted gently, "open it now. I think you'll find it interesting." Something in my tone must have intrigued him because he shrugged and began unwrapping the box, playing to his audience with exaggerated movements. "Let's see what artistic creation my sister has bestowed upon us." The room watched with indulgent smiles as he lifted the lid and removed the press release. His expression transformed as he read, cycling through confusion, disbelief, and finally, a stunned recognition. The color drained from his face, then rushed back in a flood. Vanessa leaned over his shoulder. "What is it, darling?" she asked, her curiosity evident. Adam seemed incapable of response, still staring at the paper in his hands. The press release trembled slightly in Adam's hands as his eyes scanned it repeatedly, as if expecting the words to rearrange themselves into something more comprehensible. "Artemis Digital acquires Canvas Connect in record-breaking deal," the headline announced in bold type. Below it, details of the 9-figure acquisition and my new executive position were laid out in black and white, impossible to dismiss or minimize. "What is it?" Vanessa repeated, more insistently this time. The crowd's curious murmurs grew as Adam remained frozen, uncharacteristically speechless. I gently took the paper from his hands and turned to address the room. "I apologize for the interruption," I began, my voice steadier than I had expected. "But since my brother opened the door to discussing different paths to success, I thought I might share some news of my own." I held up the press release. "This won't be public until next week, but Artemis Digital has acquired my company, Canvas Connect, in what their CEO called the most significant creative technology acquisition of the decade." The room fell completely silent. I continued, my voice warm but firm. "I founded Canvas Connect 3 years ago after recognizing a gap in the market for intuitive, powerful design tools. What began in my parents' garage has grown into a platform used by creative professionals across 27 countries." I glanced briefly at Adam, whose complexion had moved from pale shock to flush discomfort. "The acquisition values the company at a figure that, well, Let's just say it would fund quite a few engagement parties. A ripple of surprised laughter moved through the crowd. I noticed several of Adam's colleagues exchanging significant glances, reassessing me with newfound interest. Vanessa's father straightened in his chair, his attention suddenly fully focused on me rather than his future son-in-law. I hadn't planned to share this tonight, I continued. This is Adam and Vanessa's celebration, and I wouldn't dream of overshadowing their moment. But I thought it might be valuable to illustrate that success comes in many forms, through many paths. I raised my champagne glass. To different definitions of rising, and to finding joy in the journey. Whatever path you choose. The room responded with enthusiastic "hear, hear," and applause. As guests sipped their champagne, whispers erupted throughout the venue. I caught fragments, millions, and technology acquisition, and who knew? Adam recovered enough to attempt damage control, stepping forward with a strained smile. Always full of surprises, my little sister, he said, voice pitched to project casual amusement. I've always supported her creative ventures, of course. In fact, I advised her on the initial business structure. This blatant lie might have passed unchallenged in the past, but tonight was different. Funny, I replied pleasantly. I don't recall that conversation, though I do remember you telling me that design tools were hobby stuff, and that I should get a real job like yours. More laughter, less polite this time. Adam's colleagues seemed particularly entertained by his discomfort. Vanessa's expression had transformed from confusion to calculation as she processed the implications of my announcement. Her father wasted no time, navigating through the crowd to introduce himself. Impressive achievement, young lady, he said, extending his hand. I'd love to hear more about your technology. We've been looking to modernize our design processes at Caldwell Shipping. Adam watched in barely concealed horror as Vanessa's father led me to a quiet corner to discuss potential business applications. My parents approached next, their expressions a complex mixture of shock, confusion, and belated pride. Why didn't you tell us? My mother asked, her voice small. All this time we thought that I was struggling? That my path wasn't valid? I completed her thought gently. I needed to prove something to myself, not to anyone else. Success is sweeter when it's on your own terms. My father's eyes glistened suspiciously. I never understood your work, he admitted. But I should have trusted that you understood it, that you saw something I couldn't see. As the party resumed its flow, I found myself the center of attention, exactly the position Adam had occupied and expected to maintain all evening. Executives who had dismissed me earlier now pressed business cards into my hand. Vanessa's mother invited me to join her Arts Foundation board. Throughout it all, I maintained a gracious demeanor, neither gloating nor diminishing my achievement. Around midnight, as the party began to wind down, Adam cornered me near the coat check. You planned this, he accused, voice low and tight. You deliberately upstaged my engagement party. I shook my head. I plan to tell the family privately next week after the public announcement. Your toast changed my mind. His expression flickered between anger and something else, perhaps for the first time a glimpse of respect. I suppose congratulations are in order, he managed finally, the words clearly difficult for him. Though your timing could have been better. Different paths, different timing, I replied with a small smile. But thank you. And sincere congratulations on your engagement. Vanessa seems wonderful. Something in my genuine tone seemed to reach him. For a brief moment, the competitive armor dropped, and I caught a glimpse of the brother I had looked up to as a child. The company? It's really that successful? He asked, curiosity overcoming his pride. More than I ever imagined, I admitted. Turns out there's a market for hobby stuff after all. As I collected my coat and prepared to leave, Vanessa approached, linking her arm through Adam's possessively. Eliza, she said with new warmth, we should have lunch next week. I'd love to hear more about your journey as a female founder. So inspiring. Whether her interest was genuine or merely strategic, given my new status, remained to be seen, but I accepted graciously. The night had transformed the family narrative in ways that would take time to fully process. As I stepped into the cool, night air, I felt lighter than I had in years. Not because I had proven Adam wrong, but because I had finally proven myself right. The week following Adam's engagement party unfolded like a dream sequence, surreal, disconnected from the reality I had known for so long. The official announcement of Artemis Digital's acquisition of Canvas Connect made headlines in business and technology publications. My phone buzzed constantly with congratulatory messages, including some from family members who had barely acknowledged my existence at holiday gatherings. My parents called daily, their tone transformed from worried inquiry to effusive pride. "We always knew you were talented," my mother insisted, reconstructing history in real time. My father was more honest. "I never understood what you were building, Eliza. I'm sorry for that." His humility touched me more deeply than my mother's revisionist pride. 3 days after the party, Adam appeared at my office unannounced. He stood in the reception area, looking uncharacteristically uncertain amid the sleek modern space with Canvas Connect displayed prominently on the wall behind him. "Your assistant wouldn't let me past without an appointment," he said when I emerged to greet him. "Said your schedule was fully booked for weeks." The hint of indignation in his voice suggested he wasn't accustomed to being denied immediate access anywhere. "Good assistants are worth their weight in gold," I replied, ushering him into my corner office with its panoramic view of the Boston skyline. He took in the space, the design awards lining one wall, the framed magazine covers featuring our platform, the evidence of success he had never bothered to inquire about. "Nice setup," he admitted reluctantly. Though I expected more, beanbag chairs and ping-pong tables. Isn't that the tech startup cliché? We outgrew that phase. I smiled. "Coffee?" The awkward conversation that followed represented our first genuine attempt at communication in years. Adam fluctuated between defensive justification of his past behavior and clumsy attempts at reconciliation. "I pushed you because I thought you needed pushing," he claimed at one point. "I was just looking out for you in my way." "Your way hurt," I replied simply. "But it also made me more determined. So perhaps I should thank you." He laughed, a genuine sound I had almost forgotten. "Only you would find a silver lining in having a jerk for a brother." The acknowledgement, however indirect, was the closest thing to an apology I expected to receive. As the weeks passed, our family dynamic underwent a subtle recalibration. Sunday dinners featured questions about my company, alongside inquiries about Adam's investment banking. My parents began introducing me with our daughter, the tech entrepreneur, their voices carrying the same pride once reserved exclusively for our son, the investment banker. With financial security firmly established, I turned my attention toward creating opportunities for others. I established a scholarship fund for creative technology students at my alma mater, with priority given to women and minorities underrepresented in the field. The day I signed the endowment papers, I thought about Ms. Calloway, my high school art teacher who had believed in me when no one else did. Her words had been a lifeline when I most needed one. Perhaps this scholarship would provide similar encouragement to other creative minds. Working with Rebecca Torres at Artemis proved unexpectedly rewarding. She became both mentor and ally, helping me navigate the transition from founder to corporate executive while preserving the innovative spirit that had made Canvas Connect successful. "Never apologize for your creative background," she advised. During one strategic planning session, "It's your superpower in an industry full of conventional thinkers." Adam and Vanessa's wedding proceeded as planned 6 months later. The ceremony was predictably lavish, a society event covered in local publications. What wasn't predictable was Adam's toast at the reception. After thanking Vanessa's family and his colleagues, he paused, his expression uncharacteristically vulnerable. "I also want to thank my sister Eliza," he said, finding me in the crowd. She taught me recently that success isn't a single road, but a network of paths, and that the journey matters as much as the destination. I'm still learning that lesson. Tears pricked my eyes, not because his words erased years of hurt, but because they signaled his willingness to grow beyond the narrow narrative he had constructed. Our relationship remained complicated, layered with history that couldn't be erased by a single revelation or apology. But small changes accumulated. Adam occasionally asked for my opinion on business matters. I invited him to Canvas Connect product launches. We developed an adult sibling relationship based on mutually acknowledged strengths rather than comparative worth. 1 year after the acquisition, I launched a mentorship program for creative professionals transitioning into entrepreneurship. Different paths provided guidance, resources, and community for artists and designers building business models around their talents. When a participant asked what inspired the program, I shared my story, not as a revenge tale, but as an illustration of resilience and self-definition in the face of doubt. True wealth, I told them, isn't measured by the balance in your bank account, though financial success is certainly satisfying. It's found in creating value aligned with your authentic self, in building something that wouldn't exist without your unique vision. The Sunday after our first cohort graduated from the program, Adam and I met for dinner. Just the two of us, a rare occurrence even in our improved relationship. "I've been thinking about what you said to your mentees," he admitted after we ordered. He'd had his assistant watch the live stream of the graduation ceremony. About authentic success. It hit home. He twisted his wedding ring thoughtfully. "Vanessa and I have been talking about starting a family, and it's made me think about what values I want to pass on. I'm not sure win at all costs is the legacy I want to leave." "It's never too late to redefine success," I offered. "I see that now," he nodded, then raised his glass. "To different paths, and to having the courage to find the right one for yourself." I clinked my glass against his, feeling the final pieces of an old wound begin to heal. Not because he had changed completely, or because our past had been erased, but because we had both grown enough to create a new future, one where different paths could coexist without comparison, where success was personal rather than competitive, and where family meant supporting each individual's journey rather than enforcing a single definition of worth. Do you have a sibling relationship that's been defined by competition? Have you ever had to prove yourself to family members who doubted your path? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to hear more real-life experiences, and share with someone who might need encouragement to follow their own unique path. Remember, success isn't about outshining others. It's about illuminating the world with your authentic light. Thank you for listening, and I wish you the courage to define success on your own terms.